Hello, and welcome to From Digital to D&D. In this series, some random guy on the internet tries to take a character from fiction and attempts to turn them into a usable stat block for you to use in your games of Dungeons & Dragons. For those of you unaware, each episode of this series will be broken down into the following sections. The character introduction, where I attempt to explain the background of the character. The feature breakdown, where I point out what aspect of the character I'll be tempted to convert. The stat block, where I show off the monster sheet and explain how it works and how to use it. And finally the plot hooks, where I explain possible uses for the character in your games of D&D. Naturally, any character that features in this series belongs to their respective owners. For today's episode, we're going to dive into a world beloved by many, owned by Nickelodeon. Let's take a look at the last airbender himself, Avatar Aang.
So this is the great Avatar. Master of all the elements. I don't know how you've managed to elude the Fire Nation for 100 years, but your little game of hide and seek is over.
Aang is the primary protagonist of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Aang is special for a multitude of reasons, but the greatest reason is that he is the Avatar, a special individual able to bend all four elements. What are the four elements?
Water, earth, fire, air.
Aang is the next in the line of reincarnation, as when the Avatar dies, they are reborn in someone else. The previous Avatar before Aang was Avatar Roku, and he served as Aang's spirit guide, just as how Aang would serve as spirit guide to Avatar Korra. Before he learned that he was the Avatar, Aang was born to the Air Nation, a nomadic people who were comprised of airbenders who, as the name suggests, could bend the element of air. Whether out of natural talent or his Avatar abilities, Aang earned the rank of Airbending Master at just 12 years old. However, due to the plans of Fire Lord Sozin, Aang had to be told about his identity early, and the fear of all that responsibility and change led to Aang running away. As he ran, Aang was caught in a storm which forced him and his mount Appa into the ocean. But before either drowned, Aang created an air bubble around them but became frozen in the ice. In his absence, the air nomads were wiped out by the Fire Nation, leaving Aang as the last of his people in the whole world. 100 years later, Aang was awoken by Katara and Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe, and together they would set off on a journey that would see Aang master the remaining three elements and end the war Sozin started so long ago. I could give specifics about what he did during his journey, but I would be here all day, and I would highly recommend watching the original show yourself. After defeating Firelord Ozai, Aang continued his duty as the Avatar to maintain balance in the world until the day he passed away. But a part of Aang would always be broken for the loss of his people and culture, doing what he could to keep it alive even past his death. As the Avatar, Aang wields the ability to bend the elements around him in a way no other can. Other benders can only bend one element, but Aang can bend all four. Whilst his preferred method would always be airbending, Aang mastered all the other elements before he died. Bending elements is a form of spiritual magic that some people are born with. With this gift, a bender can move and alter an element in whatever way they can imagine. Doing so requires mental discipline and knowledge of the proper bending forms. Without these, a bender would struggle to make an element do little more than twitch. But with proper training, some benders can perform incredible feats. Each element requires a different thought process and bending style which best represents the element. For example, airbending is more about going with the flow, moving like a leaf being carried on the wind and evading harm. Whereas earthbending is the opposite, about being stubborn and refusing to move like a rock. Though tricky, Aang was able to master each discipline and gain a greater understanding of what it means to be a bender of each element. On top of that, Aang also learned about his spiritual side, as the Avatar serves both humans and spirits. With airbending, Aang is able to move fast and keep light on his feet. He can create powerful gusts to push opponents, run faster by reducing his air resistance, break his fall with blasts of air, and create a ball of air to ride on called an air scooter. With waterbending, Aang is able to create powerful waves, turn water into ice, create tendrils of whipping water, and propel himself through the water with a great speed. With earthbending, Aang can lift giant sections of rock, carve tunnels into the earth, and sense vibrations in the earth as a second form of sight. With firebending, Aang can fire balls of flame from his fists, create spheres of flame around him, and breathe fire from his mouth like a dragon. Those are but a few examples of what Aang can do with his bending, as the only real limit is the imagination of the bender. For example, Aang can use his glider staff to ride the wind and almost fly with it. He needs to maintain balance and can't have anything heavy on him, but with his staff, Aang can cover great distances. As the Avatar, Aang has a few additional unique traits. He can project his spirit into the spirit world to explore it, leaving his body behind. Whilst in the spirit world, he can communicate with other spirits and past avatars to gain wisdom. Later on, Aang was able to call the spirits of previous avatars when not in the spirit world, though it still required him to be in a place of spiritual significance. One of the most special features of being the Avatar is the cycle of rebirth. As I mentioned before, when the Avatar dies, the spirit and power are passed on to a newborn baby, meaning a new Avatar will rise. Finally, there's one more thing to mention about what Aang and other Avatars can do, and that is enter the Avatar state. This spiritual state is when the Avatar is at the most powerful and the most vulnerable. As explained by Avatar Roku, it is a defense mechanism designed to empower the Avatar with the skills and knowledge of all the past Avatars. In this state, the Avatar's power increases immensely, performing feats that even Master Benders could never achieve alone. This power comes with a price, however, the greatest being that if the Avatar is killed in this state, the reincarnation cycle is broken, and the Avatar ceases to exist. Like all other skills, it also requires discipline to wield and is dangerous without it. Before he had training with it, Aang could only enter the Avatar state when in immense danger or when violently angry, causing great destruction. But when he had a greater control over it during his fight with Fire Lord Ozai, Aang was unstoppable. The Fire Lord, who had previously been dominating the fight, was on the back foot and unable to even phase Aang. But with those details out of the way, let's move on to the next section. I did watch Avatar as a kid, but caught it in my later years and I loved it. It's still one of the greatest shows out there. With the recent live-action series, I thought I'd challenge myself by making a stat sheet for Aang, and here it is. I decided to make this sheet with the idea of it being Aang after the series ended, meaning it could serve as Aang just after defeating Ozai or anytime until his death. But feel free to check out the sheet at your own pace, but I'll run through each section now. Avatar Aang is a medium humanoid, specifically human, and is lawful good. You can argue that Aang should be small instead of medium if it's taken as post-Ozai Aang, but I'm going forward with the idea that he's an adult by now. The alignment was interesting, as you could argue Aang is chaotic good, but I'd make the case that by the end of the series he becomes lawful, having accepted the responsibilities of being the Avatar. Aang has an AC of 19, which is from his unarmoured defense. He has an average of 121 hit points, which is from his 16 d8 hit dice and 49 constitution bonus. Aang has a 40-foot walking speed, 40-foot swimming speed, and 30-foot burrowing speed. Moving on to stats, Aang has the following: 10 strength, 17 dexterity, 16 constitution, 14 intelligence, 22 wisdom, and 15 charisma. Aang has plus 4 to strength saving throws, plus 7 to dexterity saving throws, and plus 10 to wisdom saving throws. In addition, he has plus 7 to acrobatics checks, plus 10 to perception checks, plus 6 to religion checks, and plus 7 to stealth checks. Thanks to his seismic sense, Aang has tremor sense out to 30 feet. For those unaware, tremor sense lets Aang detect and pinpoint vibrations on a surface he's connected to. This means he can sense anything on the same surface as him, even if he can't see it with his eyes. Aang has a passive perception of 20 and knows Common and Sylvan. I picked Sylvan because the spirits and spirit world in Avatar are somewhat similar to the Fae and Fae Wild respectively, and Sylvan is the language of the Fae. You can swap that out with a more appropriate language depending on what you think spirits in the Avatar could be classified as in D&D. As the Avatar, Aang has a challenge rating of 12. Next up are the traits, and Aang's first trait is Air Descent. Unless Aang is incapacitated, he is immune to any damage he would take when falling. We see Aang fall from great heights, but find some way to negate the fall, be it by spinning his staff like a helicopter blade or using a blast of air to slow him down. Next up is Be the Leaf, which works exactly like Evasion. If Aang is forced to make a dexterity saving throw, which would result in him taking half damage on a success, he instead takes no damage on a success and half damage if he fails. Standing Leap lets Aang perform a 60-foot long jump and 30-foot high jump with or without a running start. Unarmored Defense lets Aang add his Wisdom modifier to his AC. Aang's next trait is Wind Run, which states that if Aang takes the dash action, he can run along vertical surfaces and liquid without falling. Aang's final trait is Spellcasting, which gives Aang access to a bunch of spells. However, Aang can cast these spells without needing material or verbal components, meaning he only needs to fulfill the somatic components. These spells, like most of Aang's abilities, use his wisdom and has a DC of 18. At will, Aang can cast Air Bubble, Control Flames, Gust, Mage Hand, Mold Earth, and Shape Water. It should be noted that Aang's Mage Hand is invisible, and that's so it can be reflavored to him bending a small section of air. He can cast Burning Hands, Gust of Wind, Levitate, and Thunder Wave 3 times a day each. Finally, he can cast Astral Projection, though only on himself, Wall of Fire, Wall of Ice, Wall of Stone, Wall of Water, and Wind Wall once a day each. Moving on to his actions, Aang's first action is Multi-Attack. This action lets Aang make 2 attacks, either with his staff, Elemental Strike, or a combination of the two. He can forgo 1 attack to use his spellcasting. Aang can use his staff to attack, which is a melee weapon attack with a +7 to hit against one target within 5 feet. If it hits, the creature takes 1d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, or 1d8 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, depending on if Aang is using one or both hands. Given Aang's refusal to kill, I see this as a reliable way to fight without causing great harm. Elemental Strike can be used as a melee or ranged spell attack. It has a +10 to hit against one target. If it's a melee attack, it has a reach of 5 feet. If it's a ranged attack, it has a range of 60 feet and a greater range of 120 feet, meaning attacks between 65 to 120 feet have disadvantage. On a hit, the target takes 2d8 plus 6 damage, and Aang can select between bludgeoning, fire, piercing, or slashing damage. This attack is meant to allow whoever is running it to describe whatever kind of bending attack they want it to be. You could describe the fire damage as Aang creating a pillar of flame from his open palm which he swipes down at the target, or it could be a thin slash of water to cut through the target. I encourage you to get creative with describing this attack. Moving on, Aang has a special action called Master Bending, which has a recharge roll of 4 to 6. Taking this action lets Aang use one of the following special actions. Dragon's Roar lets Aang exhale fire in a 60-foot cone. Each creature in the cone has to make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw or take 12d6 fire damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. Earthquake requires Aang to strike the ground, which causes the ground to heave in a 120-foot radius, assuming it is made of earth. Each creature in that area which is standing on the ground must make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw or take 6d8 bludgeoning damage and be knocked prone. A jet stream lets Aang blast air in a 120-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Each creature in the line must make a DC 18 strength saving throw. On a failure, the creature takes 66 bludgeoning damage, and if it is huge or spoiler, it is pushed 20 feet away from Aang and knocked prone. On a success, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pushed or knocked prone. Aang's final special action is Tsunami, which requires a sufficient amount of water to be available. How much is a sufficient amount? I'm not smart enough to do the exact maths, but enough to make a giant 60-foot high wave. If there is, Aang creates a wave of water which travels in a 60-foot cube originating from him. Each creature in the cube must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, the creature takes 60 bludgeoning damage and is pushed to the end of the cube. On a success, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pushed. Now we can move on to bonus actions, and Aang has two. His first bonus action is Air Scooter. Aang hops into the air and makes a ball of air to ride on. Whilst he's on this ball, Aang's walking speed is doubled to 80 feet and he gains a climbing speed equal to it. Aang can stay on the scooter for as long as he maintains concentration, similar to a spell. He ends his turn a few feet above solid ground, or until he ends it as a bonus action. Next up is Glider Staff, which lets Aang unfurl or retract the wings inside his staff. Once the wings are out, Aang cannot use his staff attack, but he gains a flying speed of 60 feet. The wings can be attacked, however, and have an AC of 15, 10 hit points, and immunity to poison and psychic damage. If the wings are reduced to 0 hit points, Aang loses his flying speed and must take a short rest to repair them. The last section is reactions, and Aang has two unique reactions. His first reaction is Redirect. When an attack that targets Aang misses him, he can send the attack back towards the attacker as if it originated from Aang. Aang uses the same attack roll that was made against him, but adds +4 to it. For example, if an attack made against Aang was an 18 to hit, Aang could throw it back with a 22 to hit. Aang's other reaction is Wind Barrier, which lets him add +4 to his AC against an attack that would hit him. As Boomy said,
Typical airbender tactic. Avoid and evade.
Aang must see the attacker and have a hand free to do this though. And that ends Aang's sheet, but you might have noticed something's missing. Where's the Avatar state? I considered making it a mythic trait, but to do so would require Aang to have legendary actions normally, and I don't want to default to legendary actions all the time. So I made the Avatar state a separate sheet. That's right, we're only halfway through this section. It's just as big as the previous sheet, so let's get started. Aang is still a medium humanoid, but I changed the alignment to neutral good. When in the full Avatar state, or at least without proper mastery, Aang isn't the one at the wheel, and instead the collective consciousness of the Avatars takes over. Given most Avatars were more willing to make what would be considered darker choices, I see the neutrality as the Avatar spirit and the good as Aang. Of course, one could debate alignment for hours, and it's not the be-all end-all. To help differentiate the Avatar state from Aang, I'm going to refer to him as just the Avatar for this sheet. The Avatar has an AC of 21, which still comes from his unarmored defense. He has an average of 162 hit points, which comes from his 18d8 hit dice and 81 constitution bonus. The Avatar has a 40-foot walk speed, 60-foot flying speed, which can be used to hover, a 40-foot swimming speed, and a 30-foot burrowing speed. As a reminder, hovering means that the creature stays in the air when knocked prone. And next up, the Avatar has the following stats: 10 strength, 17 dexterity, 16 constitution, 17 intelligence, 26 wisdom, and 16 charisma. He is proficient in all saving throws, having a +6 to strength, +9 to dexterity, +9 to constitution, +9 to intelligence, +14 to wisdom, and +9 to charisma. The Avatar has +9 to acrobatics checks, +14 to perception checks, +9 to religion checks, and +9 to stealth checks. Whilst in the Avatar state, the Avatar is immune to being charmed or frightened. As for senses, the Avatar has 120 feet of blind sight, 30 feet of tremor sense, and a passive perception of 24. The languages are the same as before with Common and Sylvan, and the Avatar has a challenge rating of 18. Moving on to traits, the first trait is Collective Wisdom. The Avatar has advantage on all saving throws. In addition, if the Avatar is subjected to a saving throw where he would take half damage on a success, he instead takes no damage if he succeeds a saving throw by 5 or more. This is a powerful trait which makes the Avatar hard to hurt with AoEs. Next up is Elemental Barrier. When the Avatar is targeted by a magic missile spell, a line spell, a spell that requires a ranged attack roll, or a weapon that requires a ranged attack roll, he rolls a d6. On a 1 or 2, the effect functions as normal, meaning it still affects the Avatar. On a 3, 4, or 5, the Avatar is unaffected by it, meaning it does nothing at all. On a 6, the Avatar is unaffected and the effect is reflected back at the attacker. This trait, partnered with Collective Wisdom, is what makes the Avatar so dangerous in the Avatar state. Unarmored defense works identically as before. Spellcasting is almost the same, but there are a few differences. Due to the increased challenge rating and wisdom score, the save DC is now 22. The other difference is that the spells that were once a day are now 3 times a day each, and the Avatar loses astral projection as an option. Next up are the actions, and we'll begin with multi-attack. The Avatar makes 4 elemental strike attacks, but can forego 2 attacks to use spellcasting or master bending. Elemental strike returns, but it now has a plus 14 to hit and an increased range of 120 to 300 feet. It now deals 2d12 plus 8 damage on a hit, but the Avatar can still choose the damage type from the selection. Master Bending returns, but it now has a recharge roll of 3 to 6. It still lets the Avatar use a special action, and the first option is Aqua Tendril. The Avatar extends a tendril of water towards one creature he can see within 300 feet, forcing them to make a DC 22 strength saving throw. On failure, the creature is grappled and restrained with an escape DC of 22. The Avatar can only grapple one creature this way at a time. And next is Hurricane Stream, which serves as a stronger version of Jet Stream. The line is now 300 feet long and 10 feet wide with a DC of 22. If the creature fails, it takes 10d6 bludgeoning damage and is pushed 60 feet away from the Avatar as well as not prone. On a success, the creature takes half as much damage and is pushed 20 feet away, though it isn't not prone. And next up is Pebble Barrage, which has the Avatar fire pebbles in a 120 foot long line that is 15 feet wide. Each creature in the line has to make a DC 22 dexterity saving throw or take 14d8 basic damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. A Pebble Barrage might not sound intimidating, but... The last option is Rain of Fire, which has the Avatar expel up to 5 streams of fire which plummet to the ground at 5 different points the Avatar can see. Each creature within 20 feet of the chosen point must make a DC 22 dexterity saving throw or take 20d6 fire damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. A creature can only be affected by this burst once at a time, meaning if it's in the area of 2 bursts, it only takes the damage once. No bonus actions or reactions this time, as the Avatar has legendary actions. The Avatar can take a legendary action at the end of another creature's turn. He can take 3 legendary actions and regains any spent ones at the start of his turn. The first option is Move, which simply lets the Avatar move up to his full movement speed. The next is Strike, which lets him make 1 elemental strike attack. The next options should look familiar, as they are the options Aang has in his Master Bending action. The Avatar can use them here at the cost of 2 legendary actions, and other than the increased DC, they function identically to before. I'll skip over them as they've already been explained in Aang's sheet. So, skipping over Dragon's Breath and Earthquake, the next unique legendary action is Fling. One creature grappled by the Avatar is thrown 60 feet in a direction the Avatar chooses and lands prone. The creature takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage for every 10 feet thrown, and if the thrown creature is thrown into a different creature, the other creature must make a DC 22 dexterity saving throw or take the same damage as the thrown creature and also be knocked prone. Skipping past Tsunami, the last legendary action is Energy Bending, which costs 3 legendary actions. The Avatar touches one creature of his choice within 5 feet that is either grappled, restrained, or incapacitated. The creature must make a DC 22 Wisdom saving throw. If the creature succeeds, the Avatar takes necrotic damage equal to its level or challenge rating. For example, if the creature is CR 18, the Avatar would take 18 necrotic damage. The fun kicks in if the creature fails the saving throw. If it fails, the creature permanently loses access to one feature or trait of the avatar's choice. The only way to undo this is with a wish spell, divine intervention, or if the avatar uses energy bending on it again to give it back. To clarify, if a level 10 barbarian failed the saving throw, the avatar could choose to remove the rage feature, meaning the barbarian cannot use it again at all. He could take away a lich's spellcasting trait or a devil's magic resistance trait. The only rule is that it must be a feature or trait, meaning things like a dragon's breath weapon cannot be taken away. This is an incredibly dangerous legendary action as it can remove someone from the fight forever, like how Aang taking Ozai's firebending away made him powerless. I would encourage you to keep in mind that Aang only used this 3 times that we've seen, at least as far as I'm aware. When he took Ozai's and Yakone's bending away, and when he gave Korra her bending back. But now we've reached the end of the Avatar stat sheet, and we can move on to the plot hooks. Implementing Aang and other benders is not overly difficult in my eyes, as most traditional settings have wizards who can lift mountains, explode balls of fire, and more. The 4 Elements Monks subclass already tried to give the players the option of being an elemental bender. The precedent is already there. If you don't want to use Aang, you could still use the idea of the Avatar, a special person who is born with the power to bend all 4 elements and tries to maintain the world's balance. You don't even have to have the Avatar active in your world. Remember, there's usually at least a 16-year gap between the death of the previous Avatar and the unveiling of the next Avatar. Then you have the time it takes for them to master their bending. Maybe you could run a game in the period between and have the party try to keep the balance of certain forces, make their move knowing the Avatar is gone for now. Plenty of people and creatures still enact their plans whilst the Avatar is active anyway. One thing I would suggest you don't do is have the party serve as Team Avatar, as they could easily go into DMPC territory. You might be able to do it, but it's very easy to mess up. But that doesn't mean the party cannot meet the Avatar. Maybe the Avatar is nearing the end of their life and assembles the party to serve as protectors until the next Avatar is ready. An aged Avatar could be a perfect mentor NPC for the party, handing out quests and wisdom. And then there's the other side of things, the darker side. If you're running a more evil campaign, perhaps the Avatar is a force the party must contend with. If the party are causing great upset in the world, it'll only be a matter of time until the Avatar comes to stop them. If you use Aang as the Avatar, he almost always tries to use words first. He's a pacifist after all, and all life is sacred to him. If you want, you could lean into the more childish shenanigans that Aang used to get up to, and whilst the party are trying to stop Aang, he's just toying with them. The idea of the barbarian ending up upside down in a barrel after fighting Aang sounds pretty funny to me. You could even have the party be hired by a shady merchant to deal with a pest, and said pest is Aang goofing around. And of course, if the party get a little too close, then they have to deal with the Avatar state. Without proper planning, it should be near impossible for someone to defeat Aang in this state. Going back to a more peaceful encounter, the party could be dealing with a Fae, or be trapped in the Feywild, and the aid comes in the form of the Avatar. Add in the reincarnation cycle and you've got a very special NPC to implement. But with that, we've reached the end of today's video. Before you head off, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you managed to get something out of this. The stat block for Aang and the Avatar state are available on D&D Beyond for free, and the link to them is in the description. I hope you all have a great day, and may your dice roll favourably. Bye for now.